I'm sure you're surprised a pharmacy sponsored this video, but Saraland Pharmacy is actually the best disc golf store in southern Alabama. They carry a wide variety of discs from all the top manufacturers, including Innova, Disccraft, Discmania, and all the Trilogy brands, as well as MVP and Axiom. They also carry plenty of plastic from lesser-known brands, such as Lone Star Disc and Thought Space Athletics. Their pricing is fantastic. And speaking of pricing, they have a very robust used disc section where you can get some lightly used plastic for a fantastic price, and you can also pick up various disc golf equipment that'll help you along the way. So if you're in Mobile County or any of the surrounding areas, or heck, even if you're on the Eastern Shore, definitely pass on by the Saraland Pharmacy, as they have a wide variety of equipment that I'm sure you'll love. It's definitely worth the trip. You certainly won't regret it. All right, so the disc that we're going to throw today, to kind of compare to the C-Line MD1, is I actually brought out an Ethos Pathfinder because when I was doing a little bit of testing in normal conditions, this was actually pretty similar to the C-Line MD1, and I've seen some other people make that comparison, so I wanted to bring that out. It's kind of a popular mid-range nowadays. It's similar to a Hex. If you're an MVP Axiom person, I think honestly it is a Hex, just not with an overmold. That's just my personal little guess. But then we'll have some different versions of the MD1 we're going to test today. We're going to have the Mind Bender, which again was kind of the gummier metal flake one that came out for Simon Lizotte. We have an S-Line MD1 that came out in one of the mystery boxes. And then we have the new C-Line MD1s that we're going to throw to compare it against. And I'm going to try to throw these relatively similar, just kind of flat, to see what happens. I fear this one's just going to knock them down and make me look like trash, but I am trash, so, because that's why I'm the AM. Start out with an Ethos Pathfinder. This is a little bit seasoned, so it's not like a brand new one or anything like that. Pretty straight, a little bit of drift right because of the tail left to right. That or I turned it over, and Mac will tell me if I did or not. Mac, did I turn it over?
No comment.
All right, so now we're going to go with the Mind Bender. So it got some turn to it, but the tailwind kind of stabilized it out a little bit. So now we'll go with the S-Line that came out the mystery box. That one I got substantially more height on, but it still had that same kind of slow drift that the Mind Bender and the Pathfinder had, but then just kind of stabilized out at the end. That one was a little bit nose up too, to be fair, so that probably hurt it. But now we'll try these C-Line MD1s and see how they compare. These are both basically the same weight as all the other discs. They're all in that 174 to 176 gram region, so weight isn't really an issue here. See, that one started to try the drift, but then it really didn't keep going like the others did. All right, folks, so after measuring the distance, I will say that all these discs were basically just within a few feet of each other. They're all within that 300 to 305 range. The first disc I threw, the Pathfinder, it's a little bit beat in, and I got a little bit over on it. And so when you combine that with the left to right tailwind, it kind of drifted a little bit more right than some of the other discs did, but it still had the same distance, and it was just kind of a straight flyer, which is kind of what I expect out of this disc. That's what I use it for. When we come down to these MD1s, again, they were all about the same distance down the fairway, or this open field, whatever you want to call it. But the Mind Bender definitely wanted to have a little bit more drift to the right than the others. And these two actually flew pretty similar. I would say maybe this one was like a touch more stable, didn't have quite as much drift right as this one did. But I also threw this one a quite bit lower, so it didn't really have as much time in the air to have as much action. But what I would say is that if you're throwing the Mind Bender and you find it to be a little flippy, and you like it for that slot, but you want something that's kind of like a tick up in stability that flies a little bit straighter with a little bit less turn, I think that really if you can get your hands on a S-Line MD1, it's a good option. Or obviously this stock C-Line MD1 is probably going to be a little bit easier. In fact, I think the day that I released this video is the day that they actually come out and you can go buy one. So yeah, definitely does what it's intended to do for AMs and just be a tick more stable than some of the previous MD1s that were a little bit more understable.
We're going to go straight to the Mind Bender. So same thing, gonna actually just try and throw it straight this time. see how that one wanted to flip over, and it did, and it held that turn the whole way. Let's try and compare that directly to this S-line. So pretty much the exact same release, but you saw at the end that S-blend wanted to finish, whereas the Mindbender held the entire time. Now let's do the same comparison with the MD1. That was a pretty noticeable difference. Definitely wanted to turn over a little bit less, didn't ride as much, and had some finishing stability. So you could see the difference in finishing stability and just initial stability in general between those two. I'll try and really pump this one, give it a little bit of hyzer, see if we can just get a nice flip up the entire way. Yeah, so you saw with that little bit extra disc speed on it, it wanted to hold the entire time, but never really wanted to dump over to the right and flip too much, and never really kind of dumped out. So really just a nice straight flyer, something you can put a lot of power into and have it drift right the whole time. All right, so first off, the Mindbender went the shortest and was the most right. Came in around 335 feet, whereas the S-blend was pretty much right in line, a little bit more left of it, and about 5 feet farther. So pretty similar flights, but from what we saw, this one had a little bit more in-flight stability. And then the MD1 that we threw at that same 70% power was probably about 15-20 feet farther than those two, and substantially more left. So that's due to that finishing stability and that just overall stability that we talked about. And then the one that we put a little more juice into was right in between them in terms of which one was more left or right. And it went the farthest at around 385 feet. So we can definitely see that this is a disc that you can put a lot of power into and get a nice useful flight out of. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in our final review.
All right, so now we'll get into our final thoughts on the new C-Line MD1 from Discmania. My first impressions is that this is just like a nice dead straight flyer. It has a little bit more integrity than the Mindbender or even the S-Line MD1. It has a little bit more in-flight stability, I think is kind of the term that Mac used, which I think is very accurate to how to describe it. It can definitely handle some torque as well, as you saw with his power shot at the very end. So yeah, if you are someone who is in the market for just kind of a straight mid-range that you can shape shots with, I think this C-Line MD1 is certainly a pretty good option. It's a little bit lower profile and a little bit skinnier on the rim than the MD3 or like one of the Iron Samurais. So if you're trying to compare it to other Discmania discs, that'll give you a little bit of insight as far as just like the shape and feel. Obviously this C-Line plastic feels pretty good, feels very familiar to another company that we know out there in the space that makes a similar looking plastic, so that hasn't really changed. And yeah, I just think that it's a good straight flyer. To me, it kind of compares to my Pathfinder, so it probably won't knock that out the bag, but it can certainly be a suitable backup. And yeah, I think there's a spot for this in your bag, even if you already have another MD1. Depending on which one you have, this one might be a tick more stable, but certainly not be as stable as an MD3.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to mess around with this a little more. I feel like what Dustin said, if you're in the market for a straight mid-range, this is a good choice for you to mess around with. I'm excited to mess around with it. Could very much see this making it into my bag. There's always a use for that nice, just dead straight flyer, and it's hard to find a mid-range that can handle a lot of power and still just go straight the whole time. So I think really something that some higher level arms could definitely make use of. Definitely give it a try.
All right, so yeah, that about sums it up. A disc that I think anyone could get use out of, depending on your arm speed. Obviously, the stability will increase or decrease, but no matter what, you'll be able to find a use for this in your bag. I certainly feel like this is one of the best mid-ranges we've reviewed, so I really enjoyed it. Hope you folks enjoyed the content. If you do, please follow and subscribe. Also, again, be sure to go follow Mac, as well as maybe hit him up for a lesson. And yeah, without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one.